Hey, what's up everybody, Nexil here. Today we're playing Kingdom Hearts Union Cross and we're going to be talking about the new Supernova Plus Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi medal that just dropped today in Global. And I am super excited for this banner because for those of you that have been following me for a long time, you know that I pull for every single Aqua medal and every single Kairi medal. We've been a huge fan of Kairi ever since Kingdom Hearts 1 where she saved Sora in Hollow Bastion, to Kingdom Hearts 2 where she had her own Keyblade, all the way to Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind where she was a full-fledged Keyblade wielder and she had an awesome playability with like awesome magic, super cool stuff. So I've been a huge fan of Kairi ever since the first game and I'm super excited to pull for her medal. But as always, we're going to do our banner analysis. We'll talk about the medal, the draw odds, and finally my thoughts and recommendations on whether or not I think you should be pulling for this medal. So first things first, with any new banner, avatar board, or sale in the Moogle shop, we always see how long we have to decide if we want to pull. And in this case, we have until August 16th to decide if we want to pull for Supernova Plus Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi. Remember, that's the same expiration date as the Sora banner and the Riku banner, so likely we're going to see something drop on or before August 17th. So as always, I recommend waiting till the last day, seeing everything that's available to you, and then deciding if you want to pull. We could be getting a JP anniversary banner, we could be getting the new buffer medal, so again, wait till the last day and see everything first. Looking at the banner itself, it's a pretty standard banner where it costs you 3,000 jewels every single pull. Every time you pull, you get 3 Kingdom Hearts 3 medals, which will generally be used as sub-slots. You sell them for draw points, or you keep them for some sort of unique special attack. You get 1 trait medal for Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi. You get 6 5-star or higher medals, which will generally be used as sub-slot material, or you sell them for draw points. You get 10 VIP coins, which are good all the way until the end of the month and are good for any active banner. So for example, VIP coins that you get from the Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi banner can be used to get Kingdom Hearts 3 Sora traits as long as the Sora banner is active. You also get 3 magic gems with every single pull, and remember, the gems are just icing on the cake. You don't pull because you need gems, you pull because you want the medal. Speaking of the medal, you are guaranteed a copy of Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi within 5 pulls. So that means at most, you're spending 15,000 jewels to get 1 copy of Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi. We're looking at an additional plus 2,000 to 3,000 jewels though, just to make sure we have enough traits to give Kairi perfect traits. So let's go ahead and take a look at the medal itself. So this is Supernova Plus Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi. She's kind of an awkward medal where she's sort of like a heal buffer, but isn't a true heal buffer. But we'll get into that as we go into her special effects. So she's a tier 10 upright magic medal with a base strength of 49,041, and that makes her the weakest of the trio and only being marginally stronger than the set of medals that came before, like Master Ericus, Key R24, and Xemnas B. She has a base defense of 21,608 and a flat multiplier of 21.7. Now again, this makes her the weakest of the trio because Sora at minimum is 21.92, whereas Riku at maximum is 21.96. Even though Kairi's weaker than both of them, again, she's still stronger than the previous set of medals. So remember that the Master Ericus medal, San Francisco Sora, those had a multiplier of as high as 20.58. Kairi is still higher than that, and remember, multiplier is important for things like copy medals, because copy medals will copy the multiplier of their target medal, so having a multiplier of 21.7 is still good for Kairi. She has a gauge cost of 6, which is again a really awkward thing about the medal. It means that you likely need to put an attack boost max SP gauge reduction skill in order to get the most out of her, meaning that you can't give her second chance, which is pretty much a staple for any sort of true heal buffer. There is no second chance plus SP gauge reduction skill, so again, kind of an awkward thing about this Kairi. You can still get away with putting a regular attack boost max or putting second chance on this medal, but that means you're going to be missing out completely on the gauge recovery. The medal does 1 hit, which is good for things like high score challenges, speed challenges, and raids. So looking at the special attack, she is a 2-turn buff just like Sora and Riku, and she gives perfect buffs and debuffs for general, upright, power, speed, and magic, which is better than self-buffing because not only does she take care of herself, but she also gives buffs for other medals like upright power medals, upright speed medals, so she's got really good versatility there. It gives her a place in a lot of different Keyblades, even if she's in the wrong slot. But remember, she does not buff reverse, so maybe we're going to see a reverse equivalent of Kairi, maybe like a plainclothes Xion, which I know a lot of people have been excited for, but we'll have to stay tuned for that one. Looking at her special attack again, for 2 turns, she gives all metals plus 5,000 strength. And remember, being able to give all metal strength is really good because, again, she doesn't need to be in the right slot in order to be useful for metals down the line. It doesn't matter if that metal is upright, reverse, power, speed, magic. The activation of Kairi's special attack will give that metal strength. And remember, this is a stackable ability. So with 1 activation, we're looking at plus 5,000. With extra attack, we're looking at plus 10,000. On the second turn, because it's a 2-turn buffer, we are looking at plus 20,000 metal strength to all metals, regardless of their attribute, all coming from 1 Kairi medal. And that's really good, and that's without copy medals. She also gets special attack bonus plus 220%, which is not really good because, again, we rely on our supernova attacks to give us plus 300%, if not plus 320%. So looking at the effects of the special attack, this is where she's kind of like a heal buffer, but she's not a true heal buffer. So she gives gauge healing plus 5, meaning that the medal effectively only costs 1 gauge in order to activate if you don't put an SP gauge reduction skill on her. So remember the order of activation. You have to have the initial gauge cost before the effects of the special attack will go off. So you have to have 6 or more gauges to activate the Kairi before she will restore the 5 gauges. Now, remember the order of effects. If we have an SP gauge reduction skill on her, so for example, attack boost 12 max, SP gauge 0, she will actually restore gauges back to you. So the order of effects is you activate the medal, so you have to have 6 or more gauges, and then the skill reduces the cost to 0 or 1 or 2, depending on the skill you put on her, and then she will heal 5 gauges. So if we have SP gauge 0, she heals 5 gauges. With extra attack, she heals 10 gauges, which is really good, being able to heal gauges in the middle of your own turn. The rest of her effects, she gives HP healing max, which is really good for enemies that have an interrupt attack like Gula or Envy from the Keyblade War, or like Sephiroth, where after you decrease his HP a certain amount, he will counterattack you, not defeat you, not knock you out, but will debuff you. So being able to heal in the middle of your own turn is really good, and then she also gives buffs, which is really good. So remember that a lot of medals have a damage plus condition of needing higher HP. So interrupt attacks and counter attacks that decrease your HP in the middle of your setup means that those Keyblades that require higher HP will be doing less damage. Having Kairi right in the middle of that to restore that HP back brings those medals back to maximum condition, and then Kairi herself is capable of doing damage, which is just really good utility. In the rest of her effects, she has count plus 2, which is very rare to see anything more than count plus 1 on a damage medal. Usually count plus 2 is reserved for true heal buffers, such as Kingdom Hearts 3 Nominate and Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi A. So this can be really helpful for managing the count, especially if you have a lot of medals like San Francisco Sora, Master Ericus, or something that affects count, because Kairi can bring that count back up, making sure you don't get slammed with a really hard counter attack. Now, one thing to notice about her effect is that she does not cast Asuna. That means that if you get hit with paralysis or with poison, you're going to have to find a different means of recovering from that, because she does not take care of that. You're going to have to rely on something like a heal buffer or Asuna on your pet in order to take care of that. So looking at the special attack, it is a 1-turn buff that is self-buffing for general, upright, power, speed, and magic, just like her special attack. And this is really useful for things like PvP and even event quests. So remember that the supernova attack is buffing on command, which can be useful for quests where you might get debuffed. So for example, against a critical mode Sephiroth, where his counterattack debuffs you, or when you're fighting a barrier master, where when it's knocked out, it debuffs you. So being able to just activate the supernova attack, bring all your buffs back, and then being able to do maximum damage is really good utility. Not just that, but again, she buffs upright, power, speed, and magic. So even if you put her awkwardly on like the Fenrir or something, you can still activate her supernova and then get those buffs back. So it's a really good utility to cover a lot of attributes. Her supernova attack also gives all metals plus 12,000 strength, which just like her special attack affects all metals. So again, it doesn't matter if they're upright, reverse, power, speed, magic, she is still going to give strength to all of those metals, which is just really good utility because she can fit anywhere. She gives special attack bonus plus 320%, which is our new standard for the special attack bonus for a supernova attack, and then she triggers before slot 1 in PvP. Now, because this is paired with self-buffing for herself and for power and for magic, this is really useful. remember that there are a lot of supernova attacks in PvP that activate before slot 1. So for example, Master Ericus, San Francisco Sora, both of those activate before slot 1, meaning that you need to find a way to buff those medals before they activate, otherwise you're going to be missing out on some damage. If you have Kairi before those medals, her supernova medal will activate first and then give you buffs, and then buff those other medals whose supernova attacks do not buff themselves. So it's really good utility to have in PvP. So looking at the draw odds, if you can't mercy this medal, don't pull for it. The draw odds are still really, really bad and really against you. So if you're only going to do 2 or 3 pulls, I'd say it's totally not worth it. Make sure at minimum before the campaign ends, if you want her, you mercy her all the way. You make sure you have at least 15,000 jewels to get 1 copy of her. So what are my thoughts and recommendations on Supernova Plus Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi? Like the other two, like Sora and Riku, she's kind of like an awkward version of the medal that she should be representing. So in this case, she's sort of like a heal buffer, where she heals gauges, she heals HP, she increases the count, but she also has a lot of things that don't make her a heal buffer. So for example, she doesn't cast Asuna like Kingdom Hearts 3 Nominate or Kairi, and that means things like paralysis and poison will stick. And she also costs 6 gauges to activate. Remember, a lot of our heal buffers have a gauge cost of 0 in order to 1, not spend any gauges, and 2, being able to restore gauges so that you're ready for the rest of your setup. So that's why she's sort of a heal buffer, but also not a true heal buffer. However, just because she's not like a perfect heal buffer, she's still really useful. So for example, having a medal that gives all medal strength is generally a good thing, because it means you can put the medal on awkward slots, you can put it off color, and still make good use out of it. So Kairi fits in a lot of weird slots, and remember, the most common slot across all the Keyblades is going to be upright magic. We see it quite a bit. So in Starlight, there are 2 upright magic slots. If we look at the Stroke of Midnight, again, there are 2 upright magic slots. If we look at Divine Rose, which is one of the hardest Keyblades to fill out, there are 2 upright magic slots. So we see it quite a bit, and Kairi fits in all of those slots pretty well. So let's make a Keyblade setup. So for example, let's say we're making a Divine Rose setup. Divine Rose is a really awkward Keyblade because of where its slots are. So we have 2 reverse speed slots that are separated by 2 really awkward upright magic slots. Now we're good on the 4th slot because we can have Kingdom Hearts 3 Ansem the Wise, which is a forward copy medal, and it copies the speed medal, making this slot also speed. But then what do we do for this? Because we don't want to put a speed medal there because it won't be doing a lot of damage. Even if it buffs this Riku, we still want to be cranking out some damage somewhat here. So let's just say, let me go ahead and just grab a substitute for Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi. So let's use this Kairi here to represent Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi, the Supernova Plus version. So if we put the Kairi here, number 1, she keeps the multiplier, so she still does damage on this slot. And then number 2, because her Supernova attack and her special attack still give all metal strength regardless of their attribute, this Riku is still gonna get buffs. So let's say we activate her with extra attack and her Supernova attack, she does damage here, and then gives this Riku plus 22,000 strength regardless of the fact that she is an upright magic medal. And that's just really good utility. Not just that, but she can even work off slot. So for example, if we're looking at this Fenrir, it's mainly a power Keyblade. There are no magic slots in this setup at all. However, we can take, again, just use this as a substitute for Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi. We put her here. And then, even though she gets no multiplier bonus from this, she still gives power to the Reaper and to Cloud, to the Pet Medal, and to the Friend Medal. Not only that, but if we look at copy medals, remember, we use copy medals to fix for multiplier. So in this case, Lingering Will, which is a forward copy medal, will be able to get the effective Kairi, still being able to give strength to the Reaper and Cloud and on, but also will do a lot of damage because it still maintains its 8.028 multiplier on the Fenrir. So even off slot, Kairi still works really well. She is a buffer and a damage medal that is able to bypass the requirement that you can only activate medals with a gauge cost of 6 or higher. Normally for these types of quests in Proud Mode, we have to use something like the Reaper plus Kingdom Hearts 3 Nominate, or Kingdom Hearts 3 Ansem the Wise plus Kingdom Hearts 3 Nominate. However, Kairi is able to take care of that all by herself. So if we look at Proud Mode quest, what is this? This is quest number 894. So the condition is that you can only use special attacks requiring 5 or more gauges. That means Kairi is number 1 able to buff you, and number 2 fits this requirement. We see this requirement quite a bit in Proud Mode, so it's always good to have something to combat it and still be able to give you buffs. So going back to Kairi, she is a medal that doubles up as both a damage medal and healing utility. And we really don't see that capacity with a lot of medals where they can deal a crazy ton of damage with one of the highest multipliers in the game and still is able to give you back HP and gauges. So she's very unique, and that's another reason that she's really good. Kairi is also able to buff almost everything except reverse with its special attack and its supernova attack. And again, being able to do that on command on the middle of your turn, that's really good utility to have just in general. Remember that for PvP, sometimes a lot of people use the triple threat strategy where they like to paralyze you so that you skip over your buffer and therefore you can't get a lot of damage out of the medals downstream. But remember that the supernova attack will activate regardless of if you are paralyzed. So the minute you're able to start counterattacking, the supernova attacks are going to go off. Kairi's supernova attack will go off even if it skips her in the rotation and still be able to buff everything downstream. So it's a really good supernova ability to be able to buff multiple types of medals. Kairi is also a medal that buffs universally, meaning that she can work in multiple slots and therefore prevent you from needing to buy medals to fill those slots. So again, we could put her here and still get usefulness out of her because she will buff these other medals downstream. We can put her again in the Fenrir here. Even though she's off slot, she still buffs all the medals downstream. So really good utility and versatility there. Now, one question that we have to answer, is she a replacement for Kingdom Hearts 3 Naminé? So let's go ahead and get Naminé's card up, and the obvious answer is no. So when we compare the two here, let's go ahead and just switch between these two cards. So the reason that she doesn't replace Naminé is number one, Kairi does not cover reverse buffs, whereas Naminé, if we look at her card, her special attack is able to give perfect buffs for reverse, whereas Kairi does not. Kairi does not heal gauges as efficiently as Naminé, so Naminé indiscriminately heals 5 gauges and costs 0 gauges, so no matter what, you will be getting those 5 gauges. However, for Kairi, in order to get gauges back, you need to put an SP gauge reduction skill on her, which is just, again, not good, because the third thing is that Naminé, you're able to put second chance on her, and it's still really good. You can't put second chance on Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi, or if you do put second chance, you're not getting that gauge healing effectively. And lastly, the reason that Naminé is better than Kairi as a true heal buffer is because Naminé is able to take care of those status ailments, being able to cast Asuna and being able to get rid of things like poison and paralysis. So is Kairi a replacement for Naminé? I don't think so. So who should be pulling for this medal? Really, I do recommend this medal for beginners because it's a really good starting medal. So in general, when people start the game, I usually say pull for Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi A because she is a buffer, and that's still true. But when we look at Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi A, she doesn't give any sort of medal strength, and she also doesn't give perfect upright buffs. So having Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi, the Supernova Plus version, is able to cover for a lot of the shortcomings of Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi A. Not only that, but I recommend her for people struggling with PvE. So remember that Kairi gives medal strength to all medals, and it's really good to have a medal that for one turn is able to give plus 22,000 strength regardless of the attribute. Remember, in high levels of PvE Coliseum, you're just using all of your medals to buff one medal on the pet slot so that that medal does all the damage that you need it to. I also recommend Kairi for people who want the versatile toolbox of being a healing medal that also deals damage and gives you buffs. Again, it's not the new meta, but it's definitely not useless, and under almost no circumstance is getting that medal strength not going to help you at all. Likely, if you have full setups with great medals, you're not going to need this medal. So for example, if I'm building a Sleeping Lion setup and I had if I had 5 Supernova plus Kingdom Hearts 3 Soras, I wouldn't want to replace one of them with the Kairi because those Soras still get the slot multiplier. So if you have a variety of Keyblades, if your Keyblade setups are pretty much complete and you don't need this Kairi as just a generic buffer, then it's going to be a skip for a lot of those people. So a lot of veterans will not be needing Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi. However, there are a certain class of people that should be pulling, and that's fanboys like me. So I will be pulling for Kingdom Hearts 3 Kairi, and that will be a separate video that comes after this. But regardless, if you pull, I still recommend that by the end of it, you still have at least 17,000 jewels. Because again, JP Anniversary is coming out. I believe it's September 3rd, September 4th, somewhere early in September. But you want to have jewels, make sure you can get ready for any celebration that we have. And as you can see on my jewel setup, so let's go ahead and pull up my game. So even if I pull for Kairi, even if I mercy her, even if I have to spend the additional 3,000 jewels to get perfect traits, I still have quite a few jewels going into JP Anniversary. So if they decide to release tier 11s or a new healing buffer, I should still be covered. So even if I pull for for Kairi, which I am, I'll still have enough jewels moving forward. But with that being said, that's the end of this video. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer when I have the time. If you'd like to join my Discord, go ahead and type it in your URL. It's right below the screen there. Just type it in, click enter, and you are good to go. But that's all for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, until next time, take it easy.